Hello and welcome to Colleague 7 Sprint Review for 18.08.01. This will cover the work undertaken between the 7th of August to the 20th of August. Starting with our sprint goal, and it's essentially the same as it's been for our previous sprints, except in this sprint we've now implemented a background task service to manage email logging and OneDrive checks, whilst reviewing solutions for notifications and GDPR updates. We've also undertaken the second phase of a project to deliver a panel called the Summary View, which will offer a summarized overview of record data when working within search results. Looking at the high-level items and to explain further, in this sprint we've now implemented a background task service, which will initially handle email logging and OneDrive checks. This represents improvements in performance and will also be able to error handle these functions better moving forwards. We've also completed the second phase of developments regarding the Summary View. This introduces a panel option when reviewing search results, and I'll give a demonstration on this feature shortly. We've resolved issues relating to the assignment of ownership when creating a record. This also covers updating an existing record and the markers lever feature on the contact record. We fixed a specific documents received issue, which was causing a JSON error to appear in unique circumstances. Also, the nature of this fix was applied across the whole system to improve Colleague 7's handling of large quantities of data in a table. We've updated the partial view lookups to now include the ID field. This will help when tracking down records which share the name with others. There was a minor issue with the parent-child option in lookups, which we've now hidden. We've updated the spec CV sent tab on the candidate record so that any notes logged against a spec CV will now appear when you mouse over the pencil icon. And we've added the mailshot status field to the CV parser form. We'll now go through a brief demonstration on the key features from this sprint. Okay, so I'm going to be going through the demo items for the sprint for 18.08.01. The first point to cover, and it's not really something that can be specifically shown, but it's certainly a key thing that was covered in the sprint, and that's the background service. So the background service that's now in place currently will have two key functions that it's doing. One is that it is now taking care of email logging. The other is that it's dealing with OneDrive checks. So what I mean by that is when you log into Colleague, and also whenever you go into a record, whether that be a company record, a candidate record, and generally navigate around the system, as part of doing that, it triggers functions in the system that perform certain tasks. So it would look to see whether or not you have sent any emails or received any emails, new emails. It will look to see whether or not the documents that are against the record you're viewing is the latest version of that document, if there's been some editing of that document, for example. It will check GDPR status to see if this is the latest GDPR consent status of the record, and notifications as well. So all of those are tasks, and altogether they can add up to half a second, a couple of seconds, as they all work through whilst the record is being loaded. But obviously all of that adds up to performance impact, and we want to ensure that you can open records as quickly as possible. So essentially, as I say, it's not something that I can really demonstrate, but just to explain what we've now got is a process where for email login and OneDrive checks, they're now being dealt with in the background. So there is a service running which is just continually checking for those updates. We have other updates now coming as part of the coming sprints relating to the notifications, the GDPR checks, and there's other functions as well that we can build into this background service, just so that we're taking as much out of the UI in terms of triggering processes as possible, and essentially just focusing on delivering data to the screen, so it could be just optimally working for you. So that's just the key nature of the updates that we're doing at the moment. That's why we're talking about this background task service. But I'll move on now to actually more functional items that you can actually visually see in terms of differences in the system. But that's the background service. Okay, so the next point relates to the summary view, and this really is the other main component of this sprint. So those that watched the previous video will know that as part of the last sprint, we worked on and delivered some summary view settings. These were applied to both the admin area as a global summary view base setting, and also to the user settings area so that you can have individual user settings for the summary view also. And when I say that, it's basically a list of available fields that you can view within the summary view, and then your choice of which fields that you actually have chosen to see. And obviously you can select the different entities. We've got candidate, company, contact, requirements, and obviously those are selected there, or those are options there because they are searchable entities from the search. You also have an option here to use the default setting, as mentioned with the admin option, or you can use the by saying no, you're using essentially your bespoke user settings. If we go to the admin area, as mentioned, there's this area, this summary view option that will now be available. Again, you select your associated entity, and then on the left-hand side you have all of the available fields that are searchable, and on the right-hand side you have all of the fields that you can then view. So those are the summary view settings options, but obviously now we have fitted the actual panel itself. So what we'll do is we'll go to a candidate search. We'll run a candidate search, and then we'll actually view the summary view itself. So if I bring up the search results, just run a very brief criteria there, but what now happens is whenever you select a row, you'll see that an option appears up here. If we unselect that row, it goes. So if we select this option here, and then we select to view it, what you'll see is what comes out, similar to the way the notifications work, what pops out from the right is the summary view. So this will show you the profile picture, if you have a profile picture, and it will also show you the fields that you selected as per your user settings or the admin setting if you chose to use some default global settings. But you have an overview of field data relating to the record and obviously that profile picture. What you can also choose to do is select multiple records here. So if you do that, then it will bring through all of those fields and give you an option to navigate through them. So obviously with this record, obviously that this person hasn't got a profile picture associated to them. If we move to the next one, you'll see that one appears there, but obviously all of the field data is coming through associated with that record, at least as you've requested to do so. So this is the base level functionality that has now been introduced. What comes next is introducing additional features. So we have got some UI tidy ups that we want to do, which will be part of the next sprint. So the name field will be made a link so that you can open up the record in a new tab. There'll be some extra options added. The website link button will be added. The width of the summary view might increase a little just to help with some of the displays. Yeah, essentially we'll do some UI tidy up, but what we'll also do is add in an option so that you can create history against that selected record as well as part of the next sprint. And then we'll go on continually adding functionality to this area so that you've got the option to view that person's CV, to view their skills, to view the notes against the record, maybe look at previous history records, the past 10 history records, say, against the records, things like that, so that you're able to, from the search results area, very quickly get a good overview of what's going on with that record just from this summary view. We'll also increase the scope of the summary view to other areas as well. So we're starting in the search results because it's a primary area where this kind of functionality would be used. But we'll also then, once we've taken the summary view to a status, we'll pass it out to the other areas as well. We'll move it out to the areas, so in the selection screens and in other areas of the system where there are multiple rows of data available. So that's the summary view. That's the key update that we've made in the sprints, and more to follow on that feature. The next point to cover just relates to ownership and ownership on creation of a record and also updating a record as well. So previously we've had a setting and options relating to ownership being assigned to records when you create them, but there's been a number of essentially concerns and issues raised regarding how that functionality works, and essentially it's led us to refining it further and just getting it so that it's working as expected. So within the global settings area, within the section of candidate and also company and contact. You'll see an option here called saying assign the current user as the owner when creating a candidate, and that's obviously a yes/no option that you got there. Against a company record, you've got the same option here, assign current user, and also against the contact record. Again, you've got that same option here. There's also user setting options that essentially mimic this and override these options as a user setting does. But the idea is that all of these would be set to yes if you want ownership to be assigned by default when you're creating a new record. Also, as a point of note, you'll notice that when you're looking at ownership, the ownership table and assignment is on the basis of the teams area. So what needs to happen is that you need to make sure that all users that are going to be assigned ownership have been set up within an established team, and that can be just a single team, which is the company, and all users sit underneath it, or you can actually have set out a team structure with the necessary user associated to the team. A user can also be associated to multiple teams as well, and this will account for that. But when you create a record, what will now happen is the ownership will be assigned by default if that setting is set to yes. Also, one point of note as well is with a contact record, with the mark as lever feature, if we were to run this, there's a new option that's been added here called copy ownership. So if you are marking a contact as a lever and you're looking to create that contact against a new company, and as part of doing that you want to copy over the ownership of that contact to that new company, that option is there to do so. If that wasn't selected, then it will be just whoever's running the mark as lever feature will be assigned as the owner of the new contact record that's created. But that's the updates that we've made with regards to ownership of records on creation. Just a couple of other minor updates that we've also made as well. One is to the partial views to include ID field moving forwards. So as a prime example, against a requirement here on the candidates tab, if you wanted to long list a candidate, it brings up, these are called partial views whenever you're bringing up what is essentially a mini search within the record. That's called a partial view, and what we've done is we've added in the ID field here. So if essentially you knew the ID of the record that you wanted to look up, you could simply look up that ID and it would find the record that you need to find, and then obviously you could then long list the record accordingly. What we've also done is add this basically to anywhere in the system where there is a partial view. So requirement selection is a prime example because you have all different options here. You can look for candidate, again you've got look for company, you've got company ID there. You can look for contact, again you've got contact ID there as well. If we look on interviews, that's actually what I meant. You've got the candidate, company, contact here. Again, if we look at company again, candidate, we've got the candidate ID here as well. So essentially whenever you're looking at a partial view now, the ID field has been included as part of that view. So that's the update we've made. The last point to cover is just a minor update that was made to the Spec CV Sent tab, and that's in relation to the notes area. So off the Spec CV Sent tab, you've obviously got the option to add notes against each of these rows, and that essentially allows you to have a quick overview of what's going on with each of these Spec CV Sents. But obviously, if the notes are of a limited size, that's fine. You can view within there, but generally speaking, notes are going to be longer than that, and obviously the limit of the notes that can be displayed in this column is short. What we've added is a tooltip option now, so that when you mouse over the pencil icon, the notes will appear as the tooltip, so you can see the detail there without having to click through to actually access the notes specifically. If you don't have any notes, it will just say open notes as the tooltip, but yeah, the notes relating to the Spec CV Sent will go through to here, and that's a concept that we'll introduce in other areas of the system as well, just with a view to try and offer ways of accessing data without impeding too much on the actual page, showing the actual data itself. But that's the update specifically on the Spec CV Sent tab. As always, if you have any queries or feedback, please get in touch. I'll be keen to hear from you. Also, for those using Colleague 7, feel free to submit your enhancement requests via the support team or directly to me using the above email address. The next video will be the sprint plan for 18.08.02, and as always that will contain a high-level overview on the items we intend to work on during that sprint. Thanks for watching.